That was all I had. Sorry.
Oh, okay. Trustee Warren?
I think President McKaig's hand is up. I'm still collecting my thoughts.
Oh, okay. President McKaig?
Hey, thank you. I was wondering the two items, first of all, thank you very much, Trustee Stokebrand, for doing that exercise and providing those options. The two items that relate to the river park, no, the boathouse.
There's a boathouse roof and the River Club exterior painting.
Yeah, so is the boathouse roof the same as the River Club roof?
I don't think so.
The reason I ask is because though that property is leased, to a tenant, and so I'm wondering if that maintenance is part of our landlord agreement, if you will. So obviously that's not a question, that would be a question to staff.
Right. Leanne is on the phone, is on the call? The
Yep,
Zoom?
and I can answer. Yes, I can answer that. They are two separate buildings. The River Club is leased as part of the lease agreement with Hubbard Lodge. Our lease does generally define maintenance requirements. Typically, painting would be one. We have deferred this item. This is not the first time that this has been proposed in the budget. But I don't believe that the lease agreement specifically states what items are to be done at what specific date.
And then the boathouse, can you comment on that? Give me, I remember this being deferred several times, so if you can just give me background.
Yep, so the boathouse, actually, my understanding, this predates me, believe it or not, was built by the Milwaukee Yacht Club. And when the North Avenue Dam was removed, its utility and function as a boathouse ceased to exist, and the property was transferred to the village of Shorewood. We currently use it for storage. There has been in the past an agreement, though I don't know that that agreement has ever been formalized, whereby the Urban Ecology Center also uses the building for storage of canoes and waders and some of their equipment. The roof is in very bad shape, and we're starting to experience some areas where water is entering the building.
Do they pay us rent, the Urban Ecology Center?
I do not believe that they do. That was an agreement that was made with a previous, we'll say, administration, village president, and I'm not aware that it's recorded anywhere or that it's in writing. It may be. I'm not aware of it.
It has urban ecology equipment right now in it?
Yes, it also has village equipment. We store off-season equipment in that building because you're well aware of the space limitations in our yard. So we will typically store off-season equipment there as well.
And so about what percentage of the equipment in the boathouse is Urban Ecology Center? Is it like 20 canoes or something?
Yeah, they store several canoes there. There's probably 50-ish pair of waders. I'm not sure what else they have in there presently. We typically store our leaf vacs there off season. Obviously, it's on season, so they are not in there. We have some excess planters, pots from the business district are currently stored there. There's some other materials there as well.
So about how would you divide up the space, village versus
I don't know that I can accurately answer that. It's been a while since I've been in there.
Okay. Trustee Warren and then Trustee Ursing, did you have your hand up? Trustee Warren?
Yeah, yeah. I think Arthur was probably before me in all fairness. But I don't know if you want to go.
We'll go with committee members first.
Okay.
Other than the president.
I was just wondering, Leanne, so a couple questions. So in other words, are the leaks enough so that anything in the building is liable to sustain water damage? That could sustain.
I think I can answer that a couple different ways. Based on what I understand is currently stored there, I don't believe any of the village materials stored there would be significantly damaged by water. Most of what we have there can or could survive outside. I can't speak to the urban ecology items. I think they're there with the understanding that it is a, indoor unheated cold storage. But I apologize. I don't know that I can speak to that.
Okay, and just a follow-up question. Sometimes when roofs leak, they can damage other structural components of the building. Is that the case? And what I'm worried about here is that we keep pushing this off, and all of a sudden your bill goes from I don't have split screen, so I don't know,
right.
15 or 9 or 15 or whatever it was to 25 or 30. So I don't want that cost. I don't want to double our cost in pushing this off.
I mean, that's my concern as well. And to be fair, that's always our concern. And I think, everybody understands that concept, that typically if something needs to be repaired, the earlier you catch it, the more, typically the more economical that repair is. But, in this particular day and age, we've already had a staff conversation that, it may very well be that a number of the items that we've proposed for this budget, cost-wise, that changes on a daily basis with materials and commodities and delays. So I can't accurately speak to whether what it will cost today will be different than what it will cost next week or next year.
And I understand that. I'm certainly not asking you to, but I mean, as one whose house has had a leaky roof, I understand that the problems can spread quickly, and that's my concern.
And costs typically don't go down, particularly when you're dealing with a roof with water issues.
Okay. And can you tell me a little bit also about the gator and what, and I knew this at one point, but I meant to look it up before the meeting, but I had some tech issues. So can you tell me a little bit about the gator, its function, and why it's on the budget, and why it also slots into tier 2? So a lot of questions in there.
Well, let me start with maybe I should start with the first one so don't forget it. We have a couple utility vehicles. This one happens to be a John Deere Gator model. It is used almost exclusively by our summer staff for watering and business district maintenance duties. This type of vehicle is necessary because the work they do, typically they have to put the vehicle up on the sidewalk to reach the planters and some of the areas that they have to maintain and water. It is this vehicle, we have already, I believe that this vehicle was previously scheduled for replacement because of other issues in previous budgets. We had deferred it departmentally, did not present it in the past. And it's classified as a tier 2, even though it's beyond its initially scheduled replacement age, simply because that type of maintenance would not be considered to be a core service. Beautification efforts are typically one of our secondary or tertiary services. So we applied the replacement criteria based on the vehicle's function for the services it provides.
Got it. Thank you. And sorry, just flipping subjects and flipping to you, Rebecca. Can you tell me about the, sorry, I have to flip screens here. Can you tell me a little bit about the Village Hall roof trim? I am assuming that is not anything structural, and that's more of a cosmetic component rather than having something that would be structural like a leaky roof.
Yeah, I can actually do that.
Okay.
You are correct. It is not structural. It is cosmetic, but it does need to be done, and we did present this as a budget request in last year, so for the 2021 budget, and it was deferred at that point.
Got it. And is tuck pointing kind of, again, I knew this last year, I don't know it now, and I didn't have a chance to look it
Yeah.
up. Is that kind of a similar?
Also deferred maintenance from previous years.
Got it. Okay. Chair Stokebrand, I think that covers I'm flipping back and forth wildly here. I think that covers my questions though.
Okay, thank you. Trustee Ursink?
Hey guys, sorry, obviously, if I'm jumping in here while you guys are having your meeting, but I just kind of wanted to continue to have kind of a conversation. And I apologize, I'm like now moving from one space to another, so excuse the noise. Maybe you guys could talk a little bit, and I could jump in when in like the next 5 minutes, if it's not too much, just because it's going to be noisy for me getting into a car and moving things around here temporarily. You guys
Okay,
give me 5
sure.
minutes? Sorry,
Sure.
2 minutes?
Sure.
All right. Thank you.
Trustee Arndorfer, did you have anything you wanted to add?
No, thanks. No, that was helpful regarding the roof. Thank you.
Oh, I guess I wonder, do we have a lot of places where we're providing storage to organizations for free? In the interest of doing due diligence for the taxpayers,
We do not.
do they have a key? I guess they have a key.
Yes, they have a key. We do not typically provide storage to others because, as you know, we typically don't have enough storage for our own items. Like I said, I wasn't a part of the discussion whereby this agreement was made, but it was my understanding at the time that Urban Ecology Center was providing services to the Senior Resource Center and perhaps other village linked organizations. And so this was, I believe, done as a goodwill effort. But as I said, that is my recollection, which doesn't necessarily make it accurate.
To build
Right.
on trust, sorry.
Go ahead, Trustee Warren.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I certainly, I don't, to be clear, I don't have objections to, helping out other organizations when we can, especially ones with purposes that we align with. But, the attorney in me definitely thinks we should have we should put in place some sort of agreement, have some beginning end expectations, limitation of liability. So, I just maybe that's not something we're going to do tonight, obviously, but just I think it probably makes sense to work on some of those items if we're going to continue to share space with them, just to protect the village in the event that, let's say something happens to the building and something happens to their equipment, and they decide they want to bring a lawsuit against us, something like that. So maybe that's a take. Maybe that's a take. Thanks, Beck. I see you have your thumbs up. I'll take the takeaway.
Yeah, I would agree. And I guess it would seem to me it would only be fair to say, there's, storage isn't free. The building needs a new roof. I think we should probably, I don't know. I mean, like groups that use, I know the Women's Club is being eased out of, I believe, space at the library. I think if we're looking at organizations that use village space, we should probably be consistent. And it would seem to me that they should at least pay a fee to help maintain the building if they're using a significant amount of storage there. And I agree, seems to me there might be a liability question if something goes south. Trustee Ursink, are you ready?
I am. Sorry, guys. Thank you for your patience there with me. Just following up on this conversation, can you remind me, and I knew at one point, but could you remind me where the boathouse is located?
Is this the building that has the stage?
No, it's behind that.
Oh,
If you continue past the scout cabin, it's behind that building.
Okay. I appreciate that. Thank you so much. I think, generally looking at a lot of these budget items, and being a part of this is my second budget now, and then following budgets before this, we've deferred a lot of this kind of maintenance stuff year after year. And speaking with Rebecca and others, I don't see a budget in the near future where we're going to fit any of this in. I mean, we're going to be in the same budget predicament in the next 5 to 10 years. So a lot of this maintenance stuff, well, there's DPW equipment that's in there that might not be harmed by the water. We still have, we still have properties here in Shorewood that need to be fixed. And when, if not now, when is the appropriate time to do this stuff? It's easy to push all this stuff back and say, we're going to get to this next year. We're going to get to this following year. But I mean, the fact of the matter is we're going to need to fix this stuff at some point, and I don't mind saying, I don't mind fixing it on my watch and telling the taxpayers that, we're doing maintenance. We have to do maintenance on our properties here, or else they're going to become so far in disrepair that's going to cost us much more money. The $25,000 for, the roof, or, $15,000, $25,000, that could be double, triple by the time next year or the following year comes around. So I just, for me personally, these things are easy to kind of defer. Obviously, some of it's cosmetic, some of it's not harming our equipment, but in the long run, when do we do it? And how much more expensive is it going to be when we finally get to that point? In regard, but there's good conversations to be had, as far as DPW is concerned. We're talking about doing masonry work at the yard, but there's so much a bigger conversation to be had there with DPW, the facilities at DPW. How much money do we want to be investing in those particular facilities? And should we be having a bigger conversation about what DPW looks like in the next 5 years? Because I guarantee you, it's probably not going to be at the current space it is right now. So much bigger questions to be had there. But I do think, if staff is asking us to, this maintenance needs to be done, we've deferred many of these things for the last 3 or 4 years, then maybe it's time to just do them before it gets so expensive and things actually start to fall apart, whereas we're going to be costing the taxpayers a lot more money down the road. That's just one of my thoughts regarding some of these maintenance items. The other item I kind of wanted to start a bigger conversation about is, Trustee Stokebrand and I have been talking a lot about electric vehicles and trying to electrify our fleet of vehicles. And, with the vehicles that are proposed by the police department, I honestly think that we should be going in that direction, and we should be asking the police department, to go in that direction with us. The particular vehicles that they're looking at buying, they're hybrid right now, but next year they could be electric, and there's talk about those vehicles actually being electric next year. I'd personally be in favor of waiting a year to see if we can get those vehicles electric, because it makes no sense to have this huge fleet of vehicles in Shorewood right now that, we're 1 square mile and we're just using, we're using fossil fuels, we're using gas just to drive around our community, day and night. So I would love to just kind of make a bigger move in our community and see what it would actually take to electrify our fleet. And I would also throw the Gator in that as well. And how can we, if we're reinvesting in our equipment and our vehicles, how can we make those vehicles electric, and how can we do something positive in our community, except, instead of just kind of recycling all of the things that we've been doing routinely. So, for me, the big conversation kind of is electric vehicles, and is that something we want to start to do right now? And is that something we can start to do right now? Would love to just kind of know the group's thoughts on that.
Well, I would just like to say, Arthur, I'm with you on the DPW thing. I mean, if we really go and do the deep dive on DPW, which we really need to do, the boathouse may not be there 2 years from now. So why would we put $25,000 on a storage shed that we may not even need in 2 years? I guess that's my point.
Isn't that at Hubbard Park though? Is the boathouse at DPW, or is it Hubbard Park? I don't think, when I'm talking about DPW, I'm talking about the facility, the grounds, and I don't think the boathouse is on the DPW grounds. So
No,
I don't think that's part of that.
It stores DPW equipment.
Sure, that's a good point. But then do we just raise the building that's there right now and just say, just demolish it, or do we need will we need a building at some point for more space? Is that a usable building for us, or do we want to just is it more cost effective just to tear it down, because we really don't have that much use for it if DPW has a new space that can house all their equipment?
Leanne?
That building is located in Hubbard Park. It's not ideal for our storage, but we use it because we have so little, and it's available and it's not being used. So it certainly isn't our preference. It's very difficult to get to. We can only get to it at certain times of year because of the getting there with specific equipment and damage to the turf in the park. So not an ideal place, but we do utilize it because it's available. If I could just speak to the comment about the electric vehicle and the electric gator. We have been researching that. That's pretty new technology for those types of vehicles. My understanding is they may be available. The cost difference was in the neighborhood of twice as much as a conventional vehicle. But the bigger issue is that we do not have building space in which to charge vehicles. The gators that we currently have are stored in a building that does not have electricity powered to the building. So there would be a pretty significant investment in that building. And frankly, that building, I did ask the building inspector to come and take a look at it earlier this year because I'm concerned about its structural integrity and the safety of its use. So it is not a building that I would ever recommend that we make any type of investment to.
I guess I would say if you're going to go electric, then couldn't you also look at truck 38? It's a pickup truck, right?
We can look at that, but as I mentioned, we do not have a facility that can store, house, and charge electric vehicles. And that would take a pretty significant investment in our facilities
Right.
to be able to provide that service.
I understand that. I think we're just thinking down the road, if we convert it in 2 years to electric. I mean, this is a larger question about the DPW.
We would not, my statement or my response to that is, I do not see electric vehicle charging at the current facility being a possibility. It would either have to occur at a new facility off-site or following and with a significant investment in renovation, restoration, remodel, rebuild of our current facility.
Okay, thank you. Trustee Arndorfer and then Trustee Warren.
Yeah, I guess just basic question I had. What were some of we deferred maintenance on some of these projects? How do the costs in this budget compare to where they were forecast to be in the last budget? Any line of sight to that? Just to get a sense of what kind of inflation we've seen in that, if any.
I don't have any information to answer that question.
Trustee Warren? I'm sorry, Trustee Arndorfer, did you have another question?
No, that's it. Thank you.
Okay.
Just a couple things. First of all, just something to keep in mind as we move forward. We did just build the canoe launch down by the boathouse. So, at this point, it kind of makes sense to me to have some storage there, both for now and for future state. Also, I suspect that what we're ultimately going to get here is that, we're going to have a lot of different opinions as to what needs to be in the budget, what can come out of the budget. And just as a point of order, maybe Rebecca, this is for you. Anything that we put in or take out, that's subject to village board review and approval and possible putting, like either retaking out or putting back in come November 19th. I mean, these are just sort of recommendations coming out of budget and finance. Anything we do can be discussed and relitigated, for lack of a better term, 2 weeks from now, right?
Correct.
Okay.
And I do have 2 comments if you would entertain them, Chair Stoker. Leanne is absolutely correct. We do not have capability at Public Works to electrify vehicles. We are embarking on a facility condition assessment for both the Public Works complex as well as Village Hall. So those results are going to be coming back to you at the end of January. So we'll be able to see that. Purposeful then, because we're going to use that information as we look to the future in the long range financial plan. So the time is coming. So I'm happy to hear these comments verbalized by the trustees and their desire to really seek a long-term plan for how we deploy those operations. Second, if there were vehicles that we had that would be receptive to the future of what electrification will be, it will be in the police department. However, We need to get a chief on board and in place next year and someone to follow that project through. We do have capability, but will likely require some updates to the garage that was constructed. And so I think that we need to get someone on board and be able to have that discussion. Thank you.
And I did want to just reiterate from my memo. So, the goal was to increase capital funding. Last year, it was $146,000. And this year we have proposed, it's at over $500,000. And so with a reduction of 108, we would still have 445,000 in that budget compared to 146,000 last year. And I believe Director Emanuelson, I believe you're on the call. You had indicated we would have something that would add to our revenue stream next year would be the closure of TID 1. Is that correct?
That's correct. Those funds have already been budgeted in the 2022 budget.
Okay. Anything else? Anyone?
That's all for me.
Does anyone care to make a motion? Or what do we want to present to the board?
Yeah, I guess that'd be my question. I guess to kind of defer to you as the chair, or, is this something where we bring all 6 items to the board? Do we go through, do we do a straw poll on each one for the 3 of us? Any which, I don't know which way is most efficient.
I guess I could go, do you want me to work from the list that I had?
Yeah, I think I liked your list. I think your list was a good list of so I'm good with that.
Jim, how do you feel about that?
Yeah, I think that makes sense.
Okay, so I'm going to start with the big ticket item first. The police squad, vehicle 6.
Yeah, as mentioned, I do not want to defer on that.
I'd leave in.
Okay, I would take it out. So that's a 2-to-1. The next item is the DPW Gator.
I'd be okay with removing.
Same.
Okay, that's out 3-0. Village Hall roof trim. I'll vote to take it out this year.
Agree.
I agree too. Sorry, I'm flipping in between screens here.
Yeah, me too. Number 4, DPW tuck pointing, $10,000.
I'd be fine leaving it out.
Remove.
River Club exterior painting, $15,000. I vote to move it out.
Agree.
Me as well, provided there's nothing contrary to this in the lease.
Number 6, the new boathouse roof. I vote to leave it out.
I'd keep it in.
I would leave it out so long as there's some other measures we can take to address some of the leakage. It seems like the need and future of that building is in question. So I don't want to do a major investment in a building that's going to be obsolete in a couple of years.
I'm not sure I can put a qualified out, so.
Put an out.
Okay.
Put an out.
All right.
To see if there are other options, but otherwise I'm out.
Okay, so numbers 2 through 6, we're almost in unanimous agreement that they'll be removed from the 2022 budget. But by a committee vote of 2-to-1, we'll recommend that the squad stay in.
Yeah, but I would say it's 2-to-1. On number 6, it's 2-to-1 the other way that it come out. But I think you covered that with your unanimous.
Yeah.
All the middle ones are unanimous, just
Right.
top and
Yes.
bottom.
There you go. Yes.
The middle 2 through 5 are unanimous to be removed. Number 6, 2 voted to take it out, 1 voted to leave it in, and the same thing for the squad car, right? Okay, so all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Of
Opposed?
the passing these, I guess it's just functional to just pass it along, but
Okay,
I would have preferred to win mine, but you know, I spoke.
understood. Okay, so we'll take those forward to the board, and then how are we on time? Good. Review of Q3 financial report. Director Emmanuelson.
Yeah, staff prepared the third quarter financial report, presented to the finance committee. It is staff's accounting of year-to-date expenditures and projections for the 2021 fiscal year. Overall, we're expecting a favorable budget outcome, even though we're expecting to be in a deficit budget position. But we were planning on being in a deficit budget position, just we're coming at less of a deficit. So the details are covered in the memo and subsequent pages, so I will just take questions as they arise.
I'm sorry, I'm flipping screens. I don't see any hands. Does anyone have a question for Director Emmanuelson tonight?
I'm getting to the screen as well, sorry. I'll just ask Mark very generally. Oh, sorry, I should wait to be recognized.
Go ahead.
Yeah, Mark, just very generally, anything you want to flag for us as we accept this report?
Well, the second page of the report kind of is a high-level summary, again, in an effort to make the document as user-friendly as possible. Instead of reading the details of the details, I put them in a table. So
yep.
I don't think anything here is going to be a particular surprise to trustees. These are things that have been happening for relatively obvious reasons. Police staff, obviously there's been some transition in the police department, and that takes time to fill those positions. So we're projecting a pretty significant savings in there for their staff costs. We talk about the realignment.
Mark, I'm sorry. I do have a question about that. If we have vacancies in the police department, I guess this is something I should have asked earlier, because we are replacing a squad. Will we have is there a vacancy, but if we get a chief by June, how many other vacancies do we have where we have possibly a squad sitting there unused?
I think Captain Liebenthal could address the use of their vehicles more effectively than I can.
Yeah, thanks. It really doesn't affect the usage of the squads. The squads we don't have enough squads where they're one assigned to each officer. They're deployed across the 3 shifts, and they're utilized by each shift. So essentially we do have cars that are pretty much driven like 24 hours a day in some cases.
Besides the how many vacancies do we have right now besides the captain?
We have the chief. We have the chief position that's vacant, the 1 captain position that is vacant, and then we have an officer position that became vacant when we made a sergeant promotion.
Okay, thank you.
Just a question I had. I mean, what's the expectation for collections moving forward?
At this point, I still get a sense that we're working off a little bit of a backlog from when we implemented this a number of 3 years ago, I believe. At this point, So really, I think next year will tell where we're really going to start stabilizing as far as a collection of new things going to collections, as opposed to, we had, I think, in excess of $2 million in court fines that we just lump sum threw into the system from 15 years of really not having much of a collection process. I'm pretty pleased with the way that, we've generated some income for the village in this process. It's just really a little too early in that collection life cycle to say where that's going to stabilize. I don't think it's going up. It's just a matter of where it's going to level off at with, as we introduce new items into the system for citations, be it parking or court related, that have gone unpaid.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
I had a question too, I'm not sure what this is. Property damage is reimbursable. I wasn't clear on. Under DPW, what is that?
Again, these are both zero budget line items. Because we try not to jinx ourselves and bet that people are going to run into traffic poles and light poles and all sorts of other interesting things, but those things do happen. So we've got a revenue for insurance reimbursements that we receive from these claims, and a expenditure line item for when those costs are incurred to repair and replace items that have been damaged, that ultimately are covered through our insurance or through the responsible parties in insurance. So it's just because one goes up doesn't mean that that's a favorable thing. They tend to offset each other. So while it's a significant budget issue, it really has no budget impact because they tend to offset each other, the expenses and then the reimbursements. So.
And the sewer collapse repair that we did, there's no need to budget for that further. Did we bond that repair, the $1 million
well,
on Lake Drive?
Yeah, those have been bonded for, as well as so those will hopefully be completed this year, and then you will we'll see if we have any residual bond proceeds to move forward on other efforts, or how much we can apply towards the advanced engineering on the Southeast Sewer project, and we'll keep the board apprised as those efforts move forward in the subsequent years.
I did have a question about wages, street lighting, the payout for the retiring electrician.
What's your question?
Do we make a retirement payment?
Yeah, we've got accrued vacation time and potentially accrued sick leave that eligible employees receive upon retirement.
I see.
And that's, okay. Yeah, it's kind of a legacy, but there are still a significant amount of staff that would qualify for that.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Any questions about the third quarter financial?
I'm good.
I'm good.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Director Manuelson.
And as always, if you see something at a later date, you can certainly just give me a call and I can review those items with you at any time.
Okay, thank you. In the nick of time, I think do I have public safety starting at 6:45?
Yes, we do. And so you're going to stay on this call.
Okay.
One thing I want to make you aware of is that I've overbooked you. And we haven't met yet with community and business relations, and Trustee Orndorfer was so kind to draw to my attention. I was still mentally working off of where we were earlier in the year with the same committee, different members. So what we're going to do to address that is that we have a community and business relations that was scheduled for 7 p.m. I'm going to leave you now. I'm going to go and open up JP&L. And so then we'll put something up on the screen letting people know that community and business relations will be delayed until 7:15. So our time with public safety will be taken for a half hour. So if I could ask of all of you to depart that meeting just before 7:15 and log on to community and business relations, we can hear the update on the BID's annual plan for 2022. That would be helpful. That is an item that needs to be forthcoming to the board at the November 15th meeting, because it is budget sensitive and an assessment that would need to be levied on the tax bill. So with that, I'm going to turn the host.
So, Rebecca, sorry, just to be clear, so we have a hard stop at 7. We have to get over at 7:15.
Correct.
So I'll
Okay.
take a motion to adjourn business and finance.
Yes.
I'll second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Okay, so public safety. So I am seeing a quorum of members that will call public safety to order. Am I allowed to, Tyler?
No, technically, we typically have to wait till 6:45, unfortunately.
I saw you come off mute and I was like, he's gonna stop me right away.
I am. So we're a minute and a half away.
So this is.
Just take it in.
Do a show and tell. So because the puppy is so bad, we have to kind of barricade off the dining room. He's asleep back there right now. Tyler, do you want to hit record? 6:45, seeing a quorum of members, I am calling this meeting to order of the Public Safety Committee. So I think we have 3 items on the agenda here, talking about pursuit policy, traffic stops, or sorry, pursuit policy, training, and I'm blanking on the last one.
The early intervention system program.
Early intervention system program. So I don't know who is presenting to us tonight. Who's Captain? It's
Yes.
Captain Leventhal, right?
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yes.
Captain
Correct.
Leventhal?
Yes. All right. Thank you. So these are 3 items that had come out of the police organizational study done by Dr. Weiss. These are 3 of his recommendations that we wanted to bring forth to the Public Safety Committee here to go forward and get some direction with in terms of what we're doing now versus what he is proposing. So the first item was pertaining to vehicle pursuits. And what he was speaking with regarding in his study there refers to policy number 306, our police pursuit policy. And then he says the police department should strongly consider its risk tolerance regarding police pursuits. What it may want to consider allowing pursuits only for serious felony type incidents, such as pursuing a violent offender, and that every pursuit must be approved by a supervisor. When Dr. Weiss did his study, he did it based off of 2019 data that was supplied to him from the agency. And so we all figure he already had all that data already done and analyzed. So we would need to take a look and see where things are at currently moving forward from the time of this study to now. So we looked at data from 2020 and 2021 as it pertained to pursuits, just to kind of give you a perspective of how much pursuits are utilized by this agency. And so between January 1st of 2020 and October 21st of 2021, we had 12 vehicle pursuits. The average duration of time that the pursuit took place from the time it started to the time it was finished, whether it was terminated or completed, was 1 minute and 45 seconds. So it's not a real long time that we are engaged in this activity when we do engage in it. And we only had 12 instances during that time frame, again, that we did that. The average distance that the pursuit was traveled was 1 mile. And of those pursuits, 9 of them were terminated by someone within the agency. 2 of them ended when there was a suspect vehicle that crashed. The crashes were involving a pursuit for a robbery suspect and for another suspect for recklessly endangering safety. So 2 more severe type incidents is where those crashes ended up occurring in. And 1 ended when the driver actually voluntarily stopped, which is unusual these days with these types of incidents. But again, we only had 12 during that time span of what we're talking about, January 1st, 2020 till October 21st, 2021, when we started putting the numbers together. Out of the 7 North Shore communities, we had the 3rd fewest pursuits of everybody. When we looked at the data across all 7 communities, we had 1 more pursuit than River Hills. They had 11 during that time frame, and 5 less than Whitefish Bay. They had 17. To kind of put things in perspective of how other agencies are in terms of their numbers of pursuits, Glendale had 180 during that time frame, and Brown Deer had 68. There is a document that I put together that shows all of the breakdown of pursuits by agency with that. In case you're interested in that, I believe it's in the packet. Our current pursuit policy allows for officers to engage in vehicle pursuits when it's reasonable to believe that a suspect is attempting to evade arrest or detention by fleeing in a vehicle that has been given a signal to stop by a peace officer in accordance with Wisconsin statute 346.03 and Wisconsin Administrative Code LES 3.07 sub 1 sub A. And in accordance with another statute for state of Wisconsin 346.03 sub 6, we do list several factors within our pursuit policy that need to be considered both collectively and individually when deciding to initiate a pursuit or to continue in a pursuit. And those factors are continually analyzed by our officers and our supervisors during the course of this pursuit to see if it's something that they want to continue to engage in. And those updates are broadcast by radio during the course of the duration of time that the pursuit is engaged in. One of the things that Dr. Weiss had mentioned is that all pursuits must have approval of a supervisor. Well, within our pursuit, there are supervisory guidelines that are outlined within that there. And during the course of the pursuit, the supervisor, as soon as feasibly possible, should be notifying the officers involved and Bayside Communications that a supervisor is present and that they're aware of the situation. And in most cases, the supervisor is not going to get on the air and go, I personally approve this pursuit at this point in time for this reason. The airtime is very precious. And only one person can actually speak on the air at any given time. So we try to keep the airtime free and brief as possible to give those continual updates of the information that needs to be analyzed and needs to be considered when you are engaging in the pursuit. You know, and some of these factors that we had talked about in engaging in pursuit can include things like the time of day, what kind of traffic is out on the road at that point in time. Is there a large presence of pedestrians? What's the weather? What's the road conditions? What type of vehicle are you talking about trying to pursue? I mean, if you're talking about trying to pursue some high-end sports car, our SUVs aren't going to keep up, and there's no reason to even try that. So, you know, lots of different factors are considered in there. So him getting on, or the supervisor actually getting on the air at that point and making that verbal approval is kind of not really feasible because you want to keep those airways free. And it's pretty much understood within that once the supervisor has made their presence aware that they have the ability at any point in time to terminate the pursuit for any reason at any time. So there's even factors within our policy directing that the supervisor needs to terminate the pursuit if in his or her judgment is not justified to continue the pursuit under the current policies or guidelines of the policy. And our pursuit itself also, our pursuit guidelines also dictate that extended pursuits of misdemeanors, municipal violations, and traffic offenses are discouraged. If you look across the other municipalities' pursuit policies that were included in the packet, our pursuit policy is probably the most restrictive of all 7 municipalities within the North Shore at this point in time, because of that direction that are in there. There's other municipalities that have some restrictions that I would put in their pursuit policies. For example, like Bayside, they have a geographic restriction that as long as the pursuit is maintaining within the North Shore or within Mequon, which is their neighboring agency to the north, and there's an agency that has the ability to deploy stop sticks, they can continue with the pursuit. But there's no restriction in terms of offense level in that regard, as far as that goes. And one of the things that is important to consider as well when you're looking at our pursuit policy is the amount of training that our officers do within that policy and within pursuits in general. All of our officers are mandated to go through 4 hours of pursuit training biannually. And that training is put together, the curriculum is put together by the Wisconsin Training and Standards Board. And within that curriculum, all law enforcement officers are trained identically, that regardless of what pursuit policy or what policy your agency has and what agency you work for, you're all trained in the same way. And there's some consistent things that are key within that training that are imparted into every officer that goes through that. And one of them is that anyone that's involved in that pursuit can terminate that pursuit at any time for any reason. So regardless of rank, regardless of amount of time on the job, anybody that's involved in that can terminate that pursuit at that point in time. So even with me being the current highest ranking officer within the department, if I start a pursuit and our least senior officer is involved in the pursuit trailing behind me, that officer can call off that pursuit and I have to terminate that pursuit on that direction of them and terminate it without question. And so it's something to keep in mind that even though he puts in here about the supervisor has to give approval, there's several other factors that are involved in that. And that just because a supervisor would give approval to be engaged in a pursuit, it doesn't mean that it's going to continue, that the individual officer has the ability to terminate that pursuit at any time. Anybody within that pursuit has the ability to terminate that pursuit at any time. And in regards to the balancing of the seriousness of the offense versus what our pursuit policy dictates, having a restrictive pursuit policy like Dr. Weiss is suggesting is something that I believe many people are kind of familiar with, that the city of Milwaukee had at one point in time, and they've moved away from a restrictive policy of that type back in 2019 and moved into their current pursuit policy that they have, which was also included in the packet there. We did discuss these items or this particular item with the officers within the department across all 3 shifts. And again, the officers brought up that they felt that Dr. Weiss's recommendation was dated and closely mirrored the policy that the city of Milwaukee moved away from in 2019 after it was shown to be ineffective and failed to enhance public safety. Officers also stated they felt that crime could potentially increase within the village if it became public knowledge that there was only certain levels of offenses that we could potentially pursue for. And they felt that the public may lose faith in our department and look at us in a negative way if they see us observe a situation where a vehicle pursues or flees from us and we do nothing to follow it. We may lose people's confidence in safety within the village as far as that. And they did acknowledge that our pursuit policy is probably the most restrictive one within the North Shore, but yet they still said that they would not change the policy at this point. They feel that it's fair, allows for some officer discretion, and it also has the supervisory oversight that Dr. Weiss is suggesting already built into the policy. It gives them the flexibility to gather additional information and give them the ability to make their decisions in the best interest of public safety because of some of the flexibility within that policy, that as they start to do that pursuit, if there's more information that comes out subsequently that what they thought was originally a traffic violation has now morphed into this vehicle is now just involved in a homicide or a shooting, it may give them more reason to want to continue in that pursuit than they would have originally gathered off their initial attempt there to stop the vehicle. And the officers expressed that they recognize that there is an inherent danger involved in police pursuits, but it's important that people know that they are constantly reevaluating the need to pursue. And all those factors could play a part either individually or collectively in their decision to continue to pursue it or terminate pursuit.
Thank you, Captain Liebenthal. Any questions from the trustees?
Yes.
Jim?
Yeah, do we keep tabs on non-pursuits?
In terms of ones that we could have done and we didn't,
Yes,
no, not at this time, we don't.
okay.
That's
thank you for
an
that.
interesting idea, though. That's something that I had not thought of.
Thank you for the detailed presentation. I guess we're just kind of taking a straw poll tonight, as I understand it, and Tyler, correct me if I'm wrong, as to kind of what we want to recommend for policy. And I do, just because we only have 17 more minutes until we have to go over to community and business relations, I'll just put a stake in the ground. For me, I do understand the want of discretion and, the training. And I am not saying that there is a current issue with this. There's a small number of pursuits total in Shorewood. 12 thankfully is a small number, far smaller than other municipalities near us. But, I kind of look at it a different way, and I'm not, again, I am not making any kind of accusation here whatsoever. But when you give all that discretion, it opens you up to allegations that discretion has been misapplied. So I feel like putting more structure around when pursuits happen kind of bolsters. If you're more prescriptive, those, and you're more kind of, this is when pursuits happen, when they don't happen. I feel like that leads to kind of less subjectivity in the process. So, my thought on this is I would like to try Dr. Weiss's recommendation. I don't know where my colleagues sit on this. I do understand and appreciate the police department's concern, and if it's something that became a pain point, it's certainly something we can reevaluate. I hear it, and I hear the want for discretion, but again, I view it from kind of the other way around, and I do think that I do support what Dr. Weiss's recommendations. So with that, I'll cede the floor. Trustee Arndorfer, then Trustee Stoker-Brandt.
Yeah, I guess just real quickly, noting time. Yeah, generally I agree. I mean, I do appreciate the policy as it is and the way it has been enforced. I did witness what I think may have been a pursuit that I thought was handled well, in which case there was and I don't know if it was technically a pursuit, but it was a case where a vehicle was behaving in a dangerous fashion on Downer. An officer pursued, disengaged around Kenwood, I believe, where, and we caught him coming back, and he was explained, he wasn't going to get entangled in something as this driver was heading toward the lake. So, I mean, clearly there's a lot of, sensitivity here and concern and care, knowing it's, it was noted. I do think some of this is a bit vague, and I don't want to necessarily overly prescribe what factors we need to include to justify a pursuit, but I think setting some parameters or some definition, I think if nothing else, would help, help communicate what the standards are, right? I mean, factors could include, but not limited to XYZ or something like that. I mean, I'm just throwing that out there as a baseline. It just seems it's not really clear what the triggers necessarily are, even if that there's a lot of call it institutional knowledge in terms of applying it. It might be useful to see more of that laid out in this document. And on the flip side, just going back to the Milwaukee, I think some people might argue that Milwaukee, the pendulum has maybe gone too far in Milwaukee in the other direction, and that's something to keep in mind as well. So that's all I got. Thank you.
Dr. Brandt?
Thank you. I just think it's pretty telling that 75% of the pursuits were terminated by the agency. So our own officers decided after they got started, this isn't worth it. This isn't it's not effective. It's just not the way to work on this. So it does, to my mind, that data shows that they're taking into account effectiveness, danger, risk, and deciding on their own not to pursue it, which I think is commendable. I just want to be clear then. So one of the points of contention we're talking about is the current policy allows for an officer to engage in vehicle pursuits when it is reasonable to believe that a suspect is attempting to evade arrest or detention, correct? And so, Trustee Warren, you're looking for something more specific on that?
I think I don't have the precise language in front of me, but I think the Weiss study called for vehicular pursuits to be limited to instances where there has been a violent crime or a felony. So that would be the limitation that we're looking at.
Yeah, the language that I pulled out of it was serious felony type incidents.
And again, there's even some flex in that, but I mean, again, I think that's, I would stay along the lines of the Weiss study. I think that, again, when you have a lot of discretion, when you have a lot of discretion built within the process, that can certainly lead to at least the perception that the discretion is being applied unfairly. And I want to be very clear, I'm not saying that's the case here, but I think building in more rules and parameters, as Trustee Arndorfer suggested, is a good idea.
And so fleeing is a felony, right?
It is a felony, yes, but absent of any other information, officers are trained to consider a fleeing suspect as a traffic violator. Absence of any other information, like it's a robbery that just occurred or they're involved in a shooting or something of that nature.
So if there's no other crime or felony, fleeing alone is considered, even though it is a felony, in a pursuit situation, it would be seen as a traffic.
Right. Yeah, it wouldn't necessarily be something that you would consider to be a felony for the justification for pursuing, essentially, in and of itself.
I guess I do see I have a problem with requiring the shift supervisor to condone the pursuit. I think that I can see the downside of that being, as you said, you're trying to keep the radio open. I mean, obviously, if a supervising officer thought that it shouldn't be going on, he or she would say, no, stop, come in, don't do that. So
yeah,
I mean,
they would automatically terminate that pursuit. And plus, one other thing, I guess, to give some perspective on that as well, is that if the officer is, or if the supervisor isn't actually engaged in the effort, in the pursuit effort himself, he can only rely upon, or he or she can only rely upon, the information that's being broadcast. And so they may not be able to visually see everything. They can only go by the information that they're being given over the air.
I would think it would be important for the officers to be able to have that trust, I mean, they're out there on the job every day, and to wait to have your supervisor say, oh yeah, I'm signing off on your chase. To your point, they're not in the situation. And as you had mentioned, the squad or the patrol person can call it off on his or her own volition.
At any time, yeah. And I know I personally have been in the situation of being the shift supervisor where we've had pursuits. And if I feel that I'm not getting enough information, or the information timely enough, I'll start to try to prompt to get that information. And if I'm not getting it, then I will order it to be terminated, just because I can't justify what's going on at that point in time if I don't have that information.
Trustee Arndorfer, I have you next, but I wanted to ask Tyler a quick question. Tyler, I'm cognizant of the fact that we have 8 minutes, so I'm just kind of, and I want to get through 2 of these at least. What do you need what are you looking for from the 3 of us tonight?
Yeah, we're just asking for some general direction. I looked at what we have for the November 15th agenda. There's nothing that's specifically in place yet for the full village board. So I was just taking a look at that to see if Becky had anything in mind to take this to the full board, but it looks like not yet. So, I think it's for you as a standing committee to determine if you feel comfortable making any of these recommendations to the full board for consideration. If you feel like any other volunteer committees need to weigh in on any certain types of recommendations. But from what I can see reading the memo and our future agenda, it's basically you working with Captain Liebenthal to determine what you're comfortable with a recommendation.
Got it.
So I think you can operate, unless it looks like President McCaig has her hand raised, but from what I can see, it's, whatever you're comfortable with as a standing committee to move forward with.
And so thank you, Tyler. By the way, Trustee Arndorfer had you first. So Trustee Arndorfer, President McCaig.
I just had a basic informational question. Do we have any understanding as to why those other pursuits were terminated?
I'd have to go and dive into each one of those individually to find out the exact reason why it was terminated. I could not provide that to you right now.
Okay, all right, thank you.
President McCaig.
Thank you, Trustee Warren. I was just going to say, since I was listening and I was involved in the discussion with the officers, that it sounds like what you're doing is offering, asking Captain Liebenthal to maybe look at the policy and see how it could be a little bit more specific and prescriptive, and that would be sufficient direction at this point, and then it could come back to the committee, unless you don't want it to come back.
No, I think I put my stake in the ground. I would prefer for it to be more specific. I mean, I guess I'm open to I'm open to kind of looking at what we could come up with. I would like it to be confined to violent and felony type charges, but again, I don't know that I have the majority here. I think that it sounds like Trustee Stokebrand and Trustee Arndorfer are somewhere in the middle. But I don't want to put words in anyone's mouth. I'm just trying to give staff direction, with the very few minutes that I have left.
I'd be on board with that. I mean, I guess just it's a matter of definitions on some of these things in terms of felony or so.
Yeah, I think that my concern with the language in the report was that it was a little vague also. So I think just revisiting the language is a good idea in general.
Tyler?
Yeah, I just want to ask Captain Liebenthal, based on the discussion, do you feel like you've been given, clear direction that you can go back and revisit the language and maybe make some track changes to bring back to the Public Safety Committee? Or is there anything that you want to specifically ask them to get clear guidance?
In terms of the language, are they making reference to the memo that was drafted, or to the policy, or to Dr. Weiss's recommendation in terms of the vagueness?
I think we're talking about there's a little bit of vagueness in both in our policy. Our policy provides a lot of discretion. We've been over that, and there's some good things about discretion. There's some downsides to it too. And in terms of Dr. Weiss's recommendation, I think it's pretty straightforward. So I think what I'm hearing is that I guess I can't say that, but I think that there's some support for tightening up some of the discretion within our pursuit policy. I think that's where we are as the three of us.
Yeah, I would
comfort diverse views.
Yes, I would agree with that. I mean, I think the vagueness arises when we're talking about when to initiate a pursuit. If we can lay out some parameters there and go from there, I think that might be helpful.
Okay.
Trustee Warren, is that where you were at? Or?
Well, I prefer it to be stricter, but again, I'm not sure that my viewpoint carries the day. I would hem it to the Weiss study, but again, I'm only one of 3 votes. But I do think that there's value in having more concrete guidance on when pursuit should be pursued and not.
Okay. I mean, I can kind of come up with a sample for language for the pursuit policy and bring that back if that's agreeable to you guys.
And sorry, we're kind of a rushed conversation. We're really tight on time. Sorry, go ahead.
Could it be something as simple as it's reasonable to initiate a pursuit if there is a possibility of a violent crime or a felony. Something like that.
I can take a look at it and see what we can come up with and bring something back.
Because then it also, I think the current policy includes guidelines about when to terminate, and included as that is violations for misdemeanors, municipal violations and traffic offenses are discouraged. So that's very specific.
Okay, yeah, I can try to put something together and bring it back at another meeting, if that's agreeable.
Yeah, I think that's,
Okay.
yep. So do we, so we have 1 minute? or-
Yeah, so what we can do, Trustee Warren, is we'll at least bring that item back, and then at the next meeting, we'll have more time to revisit the other two, or to visit the other two items.
Yeah,
So
I know. Sorry, I know the complaint process is, I believe, tentatively scheduled for December, so I really want to get to that. If there's any way we could have 25 minutes for a committee meeting prior to the next board meeting, because I'd really like to get this moving. I'd like to get through the next two and then the complaint process in the next 2 meetings. I just want to keep the momentum on this.
Yeah, we'll work on that.
Okay, I think we're up against the clock on time for the others. I don't know if you want to.
Yeah, so just as a reminder, before once we adjourn, you'll want to click the other link to go to the other meeting, because that's where community and business relations will be occurring. Okay.
Yep. Thank you. Thank you, Captain Liebenthal.
Thank you.